we're going to simplify this block by joining it up in sections, and we'll start with this section here. So if we're looking at it this way, if I start at the bottom, I need this rectangle of C, which is my light there, and then I need a triangle, which is D, and then my two small triangles of G. So that's going to be the first sewing I do, is to put these triangles on top of this triangle. So if I take this triangle and turn it over, you can see that these square edges are going to join up at the tip here. That makes that nice and easy, and the bottom joins up as well. So we're going to sew that seam first. So now I've sewn that seam, I need to press this to one side, and I can use my little roll and press if you've got one of these, or just use the iron, just being careful not to stretch it. So now that's on, we're going to put this side on. Like this. Now, a little tip when you're going to sew a pointed triangle and feed that into the machine, sometimes machines will complain at that. So if you get a little scrap of fabric, put it underneath your foot and just sew onto that scrap of fabric up until the end. So my needle's at the end there. Then when I take my triangles and feed them in, it's not going to try to swallow that triangle up into the machine. So I'm just pushing that up until it just hits the side of the needle, and it will just follow on and behave nicely and not try to gobble that up. So now, once I've sewn this seam has come through exactly at this spot here where these join. So if I fold that back and press, and now when I've sewn this should end up the same size as this, and then I'm going to just clip these little corners off. So now we've made that can now join onto this. And we're going to press that, and if you look here you can see that at either end I should have 1/4 inch there and 1/4 inch here, so that when the next seams are sewn you'll be able to see my points nicely. And so my next one's going to be this large triangle here of F, called F, and then I'm going to put my I triangles onto the F triangle. So we're going to keep repeating our way all the way up the block, and if you like doing chain piecing like I do, I'm going to take all my large triangles and put the small on the right of each one, and then I'll take them out and press and then put the left-hand triangles on. So I'm just lining those up now so that I get the right ones. So I've sewn all the right hand ones on. I'm just going to clip these off and then press my seams. Take my corners off. And then I can carry on. So you can see here when I put this piece on, this is sticking above. That shouldn't be happening. So I'm going to take this few stitches off here, see if I can find out why. I think it may be, yeah, let's have a look here. So these fabrics are lined up nicely on the outside, but I don't think I sewed my full 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way down. I've come off in what I call a little happy seam. So I'm just going to make sure that's 1/4 inch all the way through. This looks better. So now this time I've come out right on the corner of this green. And then when I fold that back and press, and then make sure this is lined up, you see how that's lining up better at the top now. Let me just take these little scruffy bits off. So now my green is lining up at the top, and if I sew my proper seam here, I should find that it's going to work out better. There we go. So this crossover should be about 1/4 inch down from the top there. Now there are 2 reasons why I don't want you to worry too much about getting these absolutely perfect. One is that this quilt has got a lot going on it, and if you miss a point, nobody apart from you is going to see it. There's so much to catch the eye. It's all about looking at the pattern and having fun with it. Now the other reason is that because I've put sashing around everything, when we come to put the blocks together, we can have a little bit of room for ease. So do just have fun and don't worry about getting everything absolutely perfect. Okay, so now we can line all these up the way they're meant to go. So our blue one goes on the top with the blue triangles there, followed by green to match this green, followed by yellow to match the yellow, followed by orange to match the orange, followed by pink to match the pink. Now all we need to do is to sew these seams across here. Good idea to use a pin at this point. So that's that one. There we go. So let's put the next one on. So that's my first section all sewn and ready. And so I'm going to give that a press, and then I'm going to sew these pieces onto the top and the bottom. So I've pressed those, and I've actually pressed mine all this way, but it's up to you which way you want to press them. I just found that they sat flatter like this rather than trying to bend this little point back on itself. And I think I've got probably a bit less bulk in there too. And the other reason for that is that if you're quilting later on and you want to come up these and emphasize these corners, you won't have anything in the way of doing it. So it's often good to think about how you're going to quilt something when you're doing the piecing. Now in theory, these should be the same length as my strips B, and it looks like mine is. Now if yours turns out too short, then it means that your seams here are a bit too large. If you're almost the right size, then all you need to do is to pin the ends and ease everything to fit. So I'm going to put a pin in here. And if your pieced part is too large for these strips, then that will mean that your seams are too small, so just take your seams in a little bit. It's a great way to tell how good your seams are, how good your seam allowance is, by piecing a number of bits like this. So we're going to put one on one side, like that, and then we'll do the other side. And if you find your machine struggles to get through these layers because there's a lot of seams there, just change your needle up. I'm sewing with a 75, but an 80 or even a 90. No matter how small your machine is, the needle's going to make it a lot easier to get through those layers. So once I've pressed this out, that's going to be that first section of the block. So now we've done this first section, let's move on to the next sections at the top here. Our first piece is going to be this blue triangle N, and we've got triangles E, which are the light fabric on each side of it. Oops, no, those are too big. I should have little triangles E. There we go. And they're going to go on each side of it. There. And there. And then I'm going to do triangle D, which is my large light triangle. And that's going to have Q on either side. And then we're going to have P, which is the large one of this blue, with E on either side. So I'm going to start by making these. And now these 3 sets of flying geese are made, I'm next going to make these half square triangles. So this is just pairing up the Q's and the E's. So I need 4 E's and 4 Q's, and so I'm making a half square triangle unit. So I take each of the 2 triangles, put them together with the long sides together. I'm going to sew down the long side. When you press these, if you press towards the darker fabric, then you won't be getting shadow lines. So when these are made, they should be measuring 2 inches square, like that. So that's our half square triangles made. I'm going to join the ones onto these 2 units first. So I've got this is D with 2 Q's, and it's going to have a Q pointing down here next to this Q, and one there. So I'm going to join that onto there, like that. With this one, we've got E on the outside, so I'm going to put E with the bottom left corner of E down there, and E with the bottom right corner down here, and then join those. So this piece here is this one there. This section here is this one there. With this one, you can see we're going to be making a triangle first. So I'm going to put the small E triangles on the left and right, pointing down. So we've got an angle coming down like this and like that. We'll do that first. Now we need to press those. I'm going to take them to the outside and press them. And next we're going to put this triangle on the top. So when we put it down like that, you should find that these nicely clipped corners are going to fit the edge of the triangle there. So if I put a pin in, and a pin in there, and then when I sew it, it'll ease to fit. Perfect. Now I'll press this up. And the final piece on this section is going to be putting these purple triangles on the outside. So that's going to make us a full width rectangle. You might want to pin this. I'm going to sew it from this side where the seams are, so that I don't bunch the seam up on the bottom. I'll press this open, or press it outwards rather. So that's pressed outwards like that, and now we're going to put this one on. And this line here lines up with the top here. And that's that section done. Just trim it all up. That's just taking those corner triangles off. Okay, now before I join these bits, I'm going to go and give them a press at the iron. Okay, all my pieces are pressed, so this is my first section. I've pressed that outwards towards the B rectangles. My next section that goes on, I've pressed that inwards towards the blue triangle. The next one I've pressed outwards. And I've realised that I should have pressed these inwards when I sewed those. So I will go back and edit the video so that you don't do what I've done. So we're going to join these now in a row. And because we've pressed them in opposite directions, we can make those seams line up very easily by just making them kiss together, squidging them until they're lined up. And then the same with this one. Just like when we were doing the hopscotch block. Next section on. Again, our seams are in opposite directions. And if these don't match up perfectly, don't worry too much about it, because quilting can take care of it, but this one is definitely not matching up. So that's partly because I haven't got them lined up top and bottom very well. We'll undo this, and I think partly I've not done the full 1/4 inch seam here. Part of my excuse for that is that it's a little bit awkward trying to do this with the camera right in your face. So I've got the camera right in the way of me, but we will see if we can do this better. This fabric does fray a little, and sometimes you just get fabric like that. So I'm going to try and avoid having to unpick too much. There we go. Right. So my seam's not matching because, let's have a look. We're looking at the distance down from the edge, so that's quite a long way down. You can see where my stitches was not down at the point there. This one, I've just got a bit of fray at the top. So when I put them together, I'm going to try to make sure that my points are in the same place by peeking like that. Okay, put my pin in. And then make sure that I sew the full 1/4 inch for my seam. See how we've done now. Oh, that's much better. So just taking that little bit of care, and this one's a little bit out, but I'm not going to worry about that. because sometimes it's the way you press it. If you press one way, it'll sit nicely, and if you press the other way, it won't so much. Right, so we've got one more section to put on, and that's onto here before we can put our side pieces of black on. So we're going to put these together. Now, because I can't kiss my seams this time, I'm going to use this method where I use a pin to find the point. So I've put my pin through there where the point is, and it's going to go through the other side where the point is. Just making sure that's really pressed well. There's my point that I want it to match to. So then, if I push that all the way through, those should line up. So now I've got the pin stuck through like that, and I'm going to get another pin and put that in to hold them together. And then I can take this one out, and I'm going to do the same on the other side. Push it through the point, put it through that point, push it right through, hold them together firmly, and then pin. So I'm going to pin this one, and pin my ends. Here and here. Okay, now we're ready to sew this seam. There we are, just check my line there, that's looking good, that's looking good. Now we need to press all of these, and then we can put the black on either side. Now I've pressed on both the back first, and then I went and pressed on the front. Do press hard and hold it down for a good 5 seconds. And I've taken these seams this way towards the top, up this way. So now we're ready to put our black on the sides. So I'm going to pin from this side so that I can control my seams as I'm sewing. And there's our finished block.